The Debrief. St. John the Philosopher here. Have you ever had a conversation and then a few hours or even a few days later you think, I could have stated that better, or man, I would have killed if I had said this? Well, that's what this is. Welcome to The Debrief, where I do a little commentary and analysis of my appearance on another show. Today, we're talking about the July 10th episode of The Annie Frey Show. I must say that I really like Annie Frey. She's gregarious, well-spoken, and grounded in her beliefs. She's just the type of happy warrior we need on the front lines of the culture war. I believe I was only supposed to be on for one segment, but we ended up going the full hour. I think it's because we were all just having a really good time. I've linked to each of the separate segment videos in the description below, and I'll be referring to each in my commentary, so definitely give them a watch. In that first segment, Annie got me thinking about the walkaway movement, where people describe the moment they abandoned leftism. So I decided to do my own. Look for that video coming soon. On the show, we also discussed my previous video about abortion, which you all need to check out as well. But the best parts of the show, and the ones I need to expand on, were two callers in particular. First up is caller John. Now, John's premise was that Obama was better than Trump in four particular categories of economic performance, and he believed he had the statistical proof to support that idea. Now, before we get started, it must be said that numbers don't lie, but people lie about numbers. In my study and usage of statistics and statistical models, it's very clear that there is a million miles of difference between raw data and interpretation. Like with anything, context is king. For instance, if I said, under my brilliant management, Philosopher's restaurant has sold an average of 40 pizza pies per day. Sounds great, right? At least the way I said it. But what if that was across 3 locations, and the average pizza shop in the area does 50 pies per day at one store?
It's $1.50.
Yo, stop, put some cheese in that motherfucker, man.
Extra cheese is $2.
$2?
Yeah.
Not so great now. Now, what if I then said that Philosopher's restaurants actually specialize in sandwiches, of which we sell 300 per day?
Right around that corner, there is a sandwich shop. They sell meatball sandwiches. Best I've ever tasted. Would you go get me 2?
And pizza numbers had never actually cracked 10 before my tenure. So now that 40 pizzas per day is suddenly looking good again. You get it. I see this type of thing happen in media all the time. The interpretation of the data is implied in its presentation, though analysis of the data in context could lead you to an entirely different conclusion altogether. John is kind of living in that space. I can't fault him for it, though. I'm sure he got his numbers from a source he considered trustworthy, making it par for the course these days.
The White House Reception Committee greeted the prime rib roast minister, and I do the cha-cha like a sissy girl. I like a do the cha-cha.
Reporters just throw out statistics they don't really understand, leaving the deep dive analysis to numbers guys like me. So let's unpack this. John's first statistic, intended to support his premise, is that Obama created more jobs in his last 17 months of his administration than Trump did in his first 17 months. This is true, as you can see from the chart here, but is that comparison fair? If you compared both presidents' first 17 months, it's not so nice a picture for Obama. There's also the fact that presidents can only really affect a few driving economic factors: taxation, regulatory burdens, the federal minimum wage, and the more esoteric consumer confidence, often impacted by national security threats and the like. Many of those things take time to change, and we don't actually see the full scale of an administration's results for months after new policies are set. More broadly, any administration's impact on the economy needs to be evaluated with consideration of a number of other factors well outside of America's control, like global economic health, international trade issues, fluctuations in agriculture, since it's highly affected by this fickle thing called weather, disruptive technologies, see the 90s technology boom for instance, etc., etc., etc. That's not to say the data doesn't have its uses, but the short answer on how to look at it is big trend differences in certain numbers are a big deal, little differences, not so much. The difference between the jobs numbers John is talking about is little, so meh. The next claim is about wages. According to John, wages went up under Obama and slightly down under Trump, debunking Trump's public claim that his policies reversed historic wage stagnation. Oddly enough, John is both right and wrong. The key here is understanding that there are a lot of statistical models about wages used to evaluate the health of the economy. I'm not going to bother trying to validate John's exact numbers. They seem about right based on what I've seen from a number of other statistical measures, but per this article from the well-known pro-Trump shill network CNBC, the Employment Cost Index, a measure of salary and benefit costs, registered a 2.6% gain for the full year, tied for the best since 2007, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported. President Donald Trump's first full year in office saw gains that easily outdistanced any year for his predecessor, Barack Obama, whose best showing was the 2.2% increases in 2016 and 2014. 6 of Obama's 8 years in office saw gains of 2% or less. So what does this tell us? How can real wage growth be about the same between Obama and Trump's respective administrations, but somehow historically high for Trump's at the same time? Well, it comes down to methodology. The measure John is using likely breaks down yearly earnings into equivalent hourly wages, while the one from the CNBC article, as previously stated, measures salary and benefits. This tells us that while employers may not be increasing salaries, they are fattening up benefit packages to attract new employees or to hold on to their current workers. I asked my accountant about it and she said,
still good.
The third category John brings up is where he really steps in it. Obama's average labor participation rate is higher than Trump's, but remember from the Philosopher's restaurant example, context is king. This chart shows a comparison between the labor participation rate and unemployment rate across the Obama and Trump administrations respectively. Sure, the location of Obama's section of the curve is higher than Trump's, but that doesn't tell us anything about the effect of each administration's policies on the economy. The direction of those curves does. Obama's curve shows a labor participation rate tanking like few periods in American history. Trump's is largely flat. Not great, but not bad either. The worst part of John's misuse of these numbers is that it's difficult to make the case that this is an honest mistake like the previous two. It's clearly spinning bad numbers into appearing good. Imagine the previous manager of Philosopher's restaurant started his tenure serving 150 customers a day and ending his tenure serving 100 per day. I come in as manager and maintain the 100, stopping the trend downwards. Now, imagine someone saying the previous manager was better because his customer average was higher.
Get the out of here.
The fallacy of John's last statistical argument falls into the same trap as I discussed in my earlier video in defense of President Trump. In there you'll get the full description, but the summary is pretty much as I said it on air on the Annie Frey Show. Reducing the labor participation rate necessarily reduces the unemployment rate, but it doesn't add jobs, which is the only reason we care about the unemployment rate in the first place. Pretending as though this is a one-up for Obama is the type of partisan mental gymnastics that gives me a headache. Finally, we come to caller Charles. I gotta say, I loved Charles because he allowed me to show two very necessary elements of engaging people with whom you have major ideological differences. The first thing Charles did was make a major claim about the character of conservative ideology. A pretty negative one by any measure. If you haven't heard it yet, definitely click that link to my last segment on the Annie Frey Show. Now, you have to begin contentious conversations by giving others the benefit of the doubt. Often people lead with hyperbole and exaggeration in order to emphatically state their position. Between that and the fact that we often have differing definitions for and ascribe different connotations to key words and phrases, it's always a good idea to ask clarifying questions. That's the first element. It took a couple of tries, but I did finally get Charles to admit that yes, he does think of conservatives as inherently bigoted and murderous. So here's where the second element of conversation came into play. Sometimes you just have to walk away. When people label you as the embodiment of evil, they're saying that they're completely unwilling to listen to anything you have to say. And why would they? No one thinks it's a good idea to give credence to the political opinions of evil people.
Oh, hell, let's just do what we always do. Hijack some nuclear weapons and hold the world hostage.
There was nothing that could be said to persuade Charles of anything, so it was time to say goodbye. Now, if you're paying attention, you'll notice that I skipped one of Charles' initial claims that Jesus Christ was a socialist. Well, that's a whole video all by itself. Stay tuned. Tell me what you think of this video. What do you think of my appearance on the Annie Frey Show? What do you think is the best way to deal with a guy like Charles? Discuss in the comments. In the meantime, be sure to like, subscribe, and share for more videos on religion, culture, and politics. That's all for today. This is St. John the Philosopher. Goodbye, God bless, and I'll see you in another video.